builds, rigs, tactical running upgrades, stance. Today we're going to be talking about overlanding cringe words. Build, the first overlanding cringe word. Betty Crocker had a problem. They couldn't sell their cake mix to women, and they went to Dr. Edward Bernays, a student of Sigmund Freud. And Dr. Bernays said it's because they only have to add water. You have to change that recipe to make it so they have to add an egg, and then it will sell. Remarkably, Dr. Edward Bernays was correct. After Betty Crocker changed the recipe from add water to add an egg, it sold like crazy. What happened there was a form of defeminization. In other words, if women only had to add water to the Betty Crocker cake mix, they felt defeminized and therefore they wouldn't buy it. By changing the recipe to add an egg, they felt that they were doing their, quote, feminine part of the equation in making a cake, and therefore they were more comfortable in buying the Betty Crocker cake mix. So too can we draw the analogy from that to the overlanding cringe word of build. It's a form of satisfying an individual who feels that he's emasculated. If the buyer feels emasculated and he's not doing enough building in his life, then everything else, no matter how mundane or inconsequential, needs to be a, quote, build. Now, 20 years ago, when you went to buy your car, you got some options. And then it changed to maybe configure. So you would configure your car with certain options. But then, out of the blue, everything turned into build your vehicle. What happened was manufacturers caught on to what Edward Bernays had discovered, and that is, if a woman doesn't feel womanly enough, they can be exploited. If a man doesn't feel manly enough, they can be exploited. And that's the concept behind all this build stuff. In fact, when you go on any car manufacturer's website and start selecting your options, it's now called build. Build this, build. Everything is a build. You can go down to Subway, the fast food chain, and try to get a sandwich. And instead of just being able to buy your sandwich, someone's going to go through the drive-thru. What are we building today? Let's build your sandwich. We're talking about a sandwich, but it's got to be built. So the concept of basic and moderate modifications on vehicles being called builds in the overlanding community is kind of cringe because it's not really building anything. This thing is built in Japan. If you got a Jeep, it's built in America. There are men and women that already built the car for you. You're not building it. You're just gluing on your overglamping dingleberries to the outside to show the world that you're going on adventures. The car is already built. The need to say that you're building something comes from the fact that you're not really building anything. There are, believe it or not, people who actually build off-road vehicles, and they look insane. And it involves a pipe bender and a welder. Those are built vehicles. That is the true meaning of a built vehicle. So the phrase built vehicle is true, but it doesn't apply to overglampers and gluing on nonsense to the outside of their vehicle or doing moderate modifications such as changing the shock absorbers. You undid the top bolt and the low bolt and then you glued on your Chinese shock. I built it! Rig. You've all heard that one before. Everything's a rig. The psychology behind everybody calling their overglamping vehicle a rig because they just do a few minor modifications and glue some stuff on the outside, it comes from the fact that people want their light-duty vehicles to be heavy-duty. Yes, take a deep breath. Your Jeep Wrangler is a light-duty vehicle. Your Toyota 4Runner or Lexus GX460 or Land Cruiser is a light-duty vehicle. You got a Land Cruiser 250? It's a light-duty vehicle. So far is American psychology from reality in the automotive buying industry that many people who overland think that they're somehow in heavy-duty vehicles. The duty of the vehicle has nothing to do with how well it can off-road. So a Jeep Wrangler is a light-duty vehicle, and a Land Cruiser, which this is based on, is a light-duty vehicle. It's proudly advertised in Japan as light-duty vehicles, but they would never do that in America because it implies somehow that it's not as beefy and manly enough if we call it light duty. Overglampers with their typical Jeeps and their typical Land Cruisers or 4Runners, etc., those are light duty vehicles, and they're all being overloaded with pig iron from China and crap added on top of that pig iron, and they're exceeding the gross vehicle weight or the payload capacity of that vehicle that was never intended to handle any sort of duty or workload. So far removed is the debt slave from the concepts I just mentioned that they don't even understand that what's duty anymore. That's the amount of crap and work, real work, that the vehicle is supposed to carry. What is a heavy-duty vehicle? The Land Cruiser 70 in the world market is a heavy-duty vehicle. The payload and the gross vehicle weight on that Land Cruiser 70 is way more than your typical Land Cruiser is meant for a heavy load. A Ford F-250 is a heavy-duty vehicle. That stuff is meant to be added, have a bunch of crap put in it and on it, and is able to handle those excessive and additional loads. So what overlanders like to do with their rigs is pretend that they're heavy-duty vehicles, and then in the grandest sense of irony, they end up overloading their objectively light-duty vehicles and making everything worse, the vehicle and the off-roading experience at the same time. And no, you cannot add a lift kit to your overloaded light-duty Jeep Wrangler or Toyota 4Runner. Lifting the vehicle after you overload it doesn't fix it. It's still overloaded, you just raised it up. But all that extra weight from that Chinese steel inside and all around the car, the skids, the bumper, the roof rack, the tent, blah, 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 all this crap you see right here on this vehicle is overloading the frame and everything and the axles, and it's no good for it. Ironic.
So people like to argue, well, so what? I do it for looks. What harm does doing this stuff for looks do? So let's look at a typical overlanding beard here. Problem is, doing things for looks leads to overloading. This person added up all the weight of their typical overlanding crap. 35-inch tires added 150 pounds. Yes, tires add weight. We got a roof rack. We got a winch. We got the, of course, rear bumpers swing out. We got the skids adding 100 pounds. Transfer case skids, auxiliary fuel tank, 100 pounds for rock slider. Of course, you got to upgrade your battery for more amp hours, even though you're not going to use it. Drawers, 100 pounds. Air compressor, 20 pounds. A fridge, 50 pounds. 80 pounds for your artisan olive oil press. Another 45 pounds for your beard balm. Another 25 pounds for your Vermont craft beer starter kit. Another 35 pounds for your German coffee maker. So we stop right here. This individual just blew by his payload by 200 pounds. So just that crap I just mentioned, he's overloaded by 200 pounds. But there's more. Because of course you have to carry 200 pounds in Holiday Inn Express, 25 gallons of non-potable water for shower and cleaning, 80 pounds for 5-gallon jerry cans, portable water fuel, 60 pounds in clothing for 5 days, storage box for your George Foreman grill, 40 pounds for your 5-star hotel, restaurant, folding chairs, firewood, blah, 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 blah. Then, of course, there's you and your passenger. Another 40 pounds for hiking gear, 60 pounds for drawers, air mattresses, chains, recovery straps, engine oil, 20 pounds of food, 10 pounds of cold weather nonsense, and that's another 1,570 pounds of crap that you're overloading your overlander with. Your light-duty overlander, and that's the point here. Whether you're doing this for looks or not, this owner admits that he is 2,000 pounds. 2,000 pounds over the vehicle's payload with all this extra typical overglamping crap. And this is a typical case for all these overlanders that you see, these rigs that are indeed on light duty platforms. They are overloaded.
Tactical. It's sad that this is even a word. Somehow the word tactical found its way into the overglamping community. And everything is tactical. You can't just have a regular shovel. It has to be a tactical shovel. You can't just have a regular flashlight. It's a tactical flashlight. The list goes on. Everything is tactical. Everything is special. Your overlanding vehicle is not on the SWAT team. Your overlanding vehicle is not in special forces. Your overlanding vehicle is not on search and rescue. It's a light-duty, overloaded vehicle going on easy fire roads. Tactical means it's different from the norm. So we're talking about if you're a police officer, there's normal police officer stuff day in and day out. And once in a blue moon, the tactical team, SWAT team, needs to be called for special circumstances. But when you go car camping and you take your overlander on your easy trail and you're going up and down the trail, there's nothing special insofar as a special circumstance that warrants the word tactical. But I know that takes away from being overlanding Paw Patrol. There are no tactics in what is going on a normal American trail that's a green circle or a blue square. It's been done a million times over in two-wheel drive vehicles and Hondas and Subarus for the past 100 years. It's not a special mission. It's not James Bond, Secret Squirrel.
Run, run. Oh! Oh!
Stance. It's a fancy word for putting wheel spacers on your vehicle to make it look a certain way. Now, the answer to this one should be obvious. You just like the way it looks. There's no practical benefit to wheel spacers or putting the wheels further out from the wheel well. In fact, many could argue that it's a disadvantage because you lose your line of sight when you're actually off-roading on the inside knowing where your tires are. The stance is for looks. It's like Urkel when he goes into the Urkel transformation chamber and steps out as Stefan Urkel. His vehicle has a stance and a presence that's just so stancy and just aggressive. He's so aggressive. If Shaquille O'Neal steps out of a Mini Cooper, he's still Shaquille O'Neal. It doesn't change the fact, whatever car you're driving, it doesn't change you or vice versa. I know that makes some people uncomfortable, but that's the truth. Nobody's looking over there. Wow, look at his stance over there. He just fell out of his lifted vehicle. He's got to let down a little electronic staircase to get out of his vehicle, and he just tumbled onto the floor, and now he's bouncing around. Wow, he's got such a good stance. You are separate from whatever vehicle you're driving. When you hear things like stance and wheel spacers and moving the wheels out and all, that doesn't do anything off-road. All that does is make the driver feel that they're in a more aggressive vehicle, so then somehow vicariously through the vehicle they feel more aggressive. I know Edward Bernays would have a field day with this topic if he was here right now. Running. Everything's running. What kind of gas are you running in the vehicle? What kind of gas you running? What kind of air pressure are you running? What kind of fog lights are you running? What kind of wind deflector are you? Everything is running. And that's a cringe word because we know what's behind that. And that is the need to feel authoritative. People want to run things when they're not really running anything. In fact, when they're being run over. So the individual who's run over and oppressed in his day-to-day life needs to therefore run things on the weekends. Everything becomes running this and running that and running this and running that. We can't say normal stuff as, what sort of windshield wiper fluid do you put in your windshield wiper reservoir? Nope. What kind of windshield wiper fluid are you running? It's a Freudian attempt to regain control over one's life where they have no control. Upgrades. What does the word upgrades really mean? Cheap garbage from China added or glued onto your overlanding vehicle. Whether we're talking a Japanese vehicle like this Toyota or a Nissan or any American-made truck or SUV, the fact is most people, when they upgrade, they're really downgrading because they're taking some Chinese garbage and putting it on their vehicle. They're taking off the good American stuff and the Japanese stuff, and they're gluing on Chinese stuff that's just painted fancy colors. Yes, the shocks are neon green or neon blue or magenta or purple or gold with silver sparkles, so it's an upgrade. No, it's crap from China, and since it's painted bright colors, it stimulates the, you know how bullfighters, use the red thing, Bugs Bunny in the cartoon with El Toro, the dumb animal just sees, oh my God, the springs and shock absorbers and the control arms are neon red, so they must be upgrades, and the bull just charges, some bright colors. Your Japanese and American shock absorbers and components aren't going to be painted fancy colors. They're going to be painted gray or black, but they're still of higher quality OEM than the Chinese garbage that most people will upgrade to.
I don't want to hear that. My upgraded stuff is made in Australia or Riverside, California. It's made in USA or it's made in Australia.
You bought a Chinese flag with a bunch of stars and stripes painted all over it. So who cares? If you want to dress up your vehicle, your Overlander, and glue stuff all over it, who cares? It doesn't matter. You are free, of course, to do whatever you want with your vehicle. The point of this series on overlanding is to guide the neophyte or new overlander who wants to get out in nature and off-road and car camp, who thinks, due to the overlanding industrial complex, that they need all that crap, that overlanding stuff, and need to start speaking a different language using all these cringe words that we just discussed here today in order to get out there and actually overland. It's disingenuous, and someone needs to balance this out. And that's the point of this video series. You don't need to get sucked in to the world of fake, phony, overglamping nonsense. I didn't say don't modify your vehicle or don't glue stuff or decorate or do whatever you want with it. I'm saying form and function must be identified, and there must be a distinction between the two, and there must be an understanding of what is looks and what is function. So it's not an argument of keep your vehicle bone stock, blah, blah, blah. It's saying simply keep it in perspective. Most of the crap is not a requirement at all to go overlanding. The overlanding crap that I mentioned and the overlanding words that I mentioned serve as a detriment to people who want to enter the world of overlanding. It is a barrier. It stops them from enjoying something that people have enjoyed forever, which is taking vehicles off-road and camping out in nature. The buzzwords are just that, hype and buzzwords. Take yourself off-road, and whatever you have, you'll get further than you realize.